Okay, I know you're all kind of question about this problem that's coming. I'm going to discuss it. So you know the assignment has to do with spectroscopy, right? And your reading should help you get a good idea what let's talk about spectroscopy a little now, just to cover the basics. What is spectroscopy? Well, the simple definition I can give you is that the spectroscopy is the study of interaction between matter and light. Now, visual light consists of different colors or wavelengths, which together makes up what's called a spectrum, a band of colors like you see in the rainbow. And all substances, all forms of matter, can be distinguished according to what wavelengths of light they absorb and which one they reflect. It's like every element has what we call its own spectral signature. If we can read that signature, we can identify the element and exactly what the spectroscopy does. Now, laser spectroscopy, which is a assignment, works by measuring very precisely what parts of the spectrum are absorbed by different substances, and it has operation in a lot of different disciplines. The assignment will be to choose a discipline that interests you and differs in instrument. And for example, I'm going to cover the dimension in the art. And to me, it's interesting how spectroscopy is used to analyze that. Let's say a museum curator comes to you with a problem. She's come across this painting that appears to be real. Let's say a Rembrandt. She wants to acquire it for her museum, but she got a problem. She's not absolutely certain it's an original. So what do you do? How do you determine whether the painting is authentic? Okay, think of a scientific process. You got a question, is the painting a Rembrandt? So first, you need to make a list of characteristics the painting would have to be a Rembrandt. Then you have to discover whether the painting in question has those characteristics. So first of all, you need to know the techniques from canvas with brush on paint. So you need to work with an art historian who has actual knowledge of relevant style. You have to know when he created his paintings and what pigment he used, in other words, what ingredients he used to make different colors of painting coats. Have changed over time. Since you verify its Rembrandt, the pigment Rembrandt lifetime in the 17th century, and that's where chemistry comes in. You got to find out what's in those figures and the composition of electrical lab work. Detective work vary. In a word, spectroscopy. So how do we spectroscopy? Well, we put an infrared microscope spectroscope on tiny bits of paint, and using ultraviolet light, we can see spectral video with the part of the pigments. Then we compare this signature with those particular elements like the ink or red the made of. So you can see what and orange of pigments, right? How it's made. See with a different pigment was made with zinc, for example, we know the spectral signature of zinc and its matches the pigment. We also know zinc was discovered until the 18th century, and since the 17th century, we know he couldn't have painted. Now, spectroscopy has a very distinctive advantage over previous methods of knowledge works because it's not invasive. You don't have to remove big chips or paint to do your analysis, which is what other methods require. All I do is to remove the tiny flecks of paint and analyze them. Now, what about restoration? Sometimes original words appear questionable and inauthentic because they restore the touch-up layer to cover damage from the paint having good tool for time. Well, spectroscopy can reveal the composition of those touch-up layers too, so we can find when they are applied. Then, if we want to undo some bad restoration attempts, we can determine what kind of process we can use to remove them to dissolve the paint and uncover the original. Now, we can't really talk about the fairy tales without first talking about the folk tales because there's a strong connection between these two genres. Yeah, so stories. In fact, many fairy tales started out as folktales. So, how do you characterize, Jeff? Well, they're old stories, traditional stories. They are passed down orally in culture from generation to generation, so they change a lot over time. I mean, every storytelling may be over time. They're locally different, and that's why we say folktales are communal. By communal, we mean they reflect the traits and the culture that pretty good. It's the same different community with certain aspects of the tale adapted to fit the specific community. No, not the plot. The details of what happens in the story would remain constant. That was the thread that held the tale, but all the other elements, like the location or characters, might be modified for each audience. Okay, so what about fairy tales? They also are found in the most culture, but how are they different from folktale? I guess the first question is, what is a fairy tale? And not even say a story with a fairy in it, because we all know that very few fairy tales actually have those tiny magical creatures in them. But what else can we say about them, Mary? Well, they seem to be less realistic than folktales, or improper time. That's uncommon when royalty, a prince or princess, and the fairy tale all seem to take place in a location that's nowhere and everywhere at the same time. What's the idea of how do all the stories set was sometime in a faraway land? Oh, it's called so fit each storyteller would specify a particular location and time. For different theory, with fairy tale, the location is unspecified, no matter who the storyteller is. The land far away. We'll counter to this point in a few minutes. And it's just a written version of an oral folktale. Well, not exactly, though that is how many fairy tales there are. For example, in the late 18th century, the Greenberg that Rabbit throat was no genre recorded local folktales. These were eventually published as a fairy tale, but not before undergoing a process of evolution. And everything happens when oral tales get written down. Further, the language changes. It is more formal, more standard, some might say less colorful. Writing them later. Second, when orally transmitted story is written down, the authoritative version with the recognized author is created. The communal aspect gets lost. The tale no longer belongs to the community, it belongs to the world, so to speak. Because of this, elements like place and time can no longer be so identifiable more general to any audience. On the other hand, description of characters and setting can be developed more completely in folktale. Characters like to be identified by name, but a little more about them. But in a fairy tale, people no longer have to remember plots. They're written down, right? So more energy can be put into other elements of the story, like character and setting. So you can get more detail about the character, about the action that take place, what people's houses are like. Was there a small cabin or grand palaces? No, this was investigated largely because the story now in the book form isn't in danger of being lost. Those details won't be forgotten. If a folktale isn't repeated by each generation, it may be lost for all time. It will return its roots there again and again. Another interesting difference involves the change in notice. Because there are influences made from contrary to what we are very today, folktales were originally intended for adults, not for children. Tell to our children nowadays.